Hello, hello, yes it is I, the conspicuous moo. And now that Blizzcon Online is finished, I think it's probably time that we sat down and picked it apart a little bit. A lot of this stuff is going to be, you know, a little bit on the negative side, but I will break everything up in timestamps below because I get the feeling that this is going to be a rather long recording. So I think without further ado, let us get cracking. First of all, I think it's probably time to get, you know, the most obvious announcement in the entire world out of the way. And that is, of course, the Burning Crusade Classic announcement. We were all expecting this to happen, you know, it's not entirely a surprise. You know, Classic was an amazing success and pretty much propped up subscription numbers at the end of BFA for a considerable period of time. It's still very popular, and so, you know, it's not entirely surprising that they would move on to the next expansion, which was, in many people's eyes, an improvement upon the original. You can opt into TBC beta right now if you so wish. The beta is not live yet, but at least you can have the option to, you know, have the opportunity to poke around when it does go live. Now, when it comes to the choosing of your pathway, there are several. One slightly controversial, but you know, it is Blizzard Entertainment, so I wasn't entirely surprised. We'll get onto that in a second. So you'll have the choice with your characters to either choose to stay in the Classic server forever, or to have yourself cloned over to the new Burning Crusade server. So that's very, very exciting. It's a good way of doing it, I think. You know, whether or not you have the option later on to say, okay, I'm done with Classic, there is nothing left to do here, and then clone them over to TBC, that is very likely as well. Will it involve a cost? Maybe. And of course they have also introduced the concept of a level 58 boost, so yes, you will be able to boost a character to level 58 so you can be ready for TBC when it does come out. One of the other things is that they're not going to have a gold cap for transferred players, so you know there's going to be a substantial advantage for people who want to pay their way through dungeons and raids, etc. Because you know we're going to be still working with a modern meta, even though it's a much older game, as we saw in Classic. Like I said, it's not surprising that this has been announced. It's been flagged for an awful long time. Then there was the Netherwing pet, so you know there were no surprises here in this announcement. I wish personally I could be more excited about it, but to be honest, I don't have the time for it. I do not have the time to do a retail player and be interested in, you know, still doing. There's a lot of Classic I haven't done yet. And then also have a Burning Crusade character. So, you know, this is the lowest of the three possible options that I have, and I do play other games as well, so, you know, I will roll a character and I'll have a look around, but, you know, to be honest, I'm not going to be taking it seriously because I simply do not have the time. And even if I did have, like, a machine that froze time, all of you guys would be frozen, I'd have no one to play with anyway. So, I've even gone into that level of detail with planning this. So, you know, I started on the Burning Crusade. It wasn't my favourite expansion. I didn't really get into the guts of it. It was really Wrath where I hit my first max level character, which is a balanced druid called Pistachios. And, yeah, so I went on from there. So Wrath has got much more of a draw for me, so I'm sure that'll be coming around the corner. There will be some certain tweaking around the edges. There was something they were talking about, the different seals that Paladins have on either the Hall or the Alliance side. They will be able to get both of those now, just at different levels, but it will level out once you hit the level cap of 70. And there was a proposal as well for the group finder to be changed. The original TBC group finder wasn't a terribly good UI. Now, before anyone panics, this is not group finder where, you know, you just get a whole bunch of randoms and you port straight to the dungeon and you port out again. That's not what's being proposed here. It's more along the lines of, you know, the way that you form groups for Mythic Plus. You know, you're looking for DPS with a certain rate of IO score and TBC. You know, you all still have to go to the dungeon and take part in it. You know, you have to do all the travelling and stuff. And if people drop, then it's a real pain in the bum. So it's going to be like the Mythic Plus system, basically, you know, how we're forming groups now. So please do not panic. At the moment, it doesn't look like, at least, you know, from reading between the lines, that it's going to be anything like, you know, the retail group finder. And they did do a bit of a switcheroo on the schedule as well when we kicked off. It was meant to be, you know, World of Warcraft What's Next, which was pretty much Shadowlands news was going to be first, but they put in 30 minutes of dull reminiscing about, oh, do you remember the time when you had to choose between Elders and Scries? That wasn't fascinating in any way, shape or form. You know, if they had something a little more concrete to go into it, like there needed to be more future plans. It shouldn't have just been remember when, because yes, we do remember when that happened. So this is not interesting to us, so I wish they got to the point a little quicker. Kind of like my videos in some respect. So let's go into some of the things that Blizzard did okay with the Blizzconline announcement. So, as we were all probably aware, the 9.1 patch is going to be called Chains of Domination. We mostly knew that not because of a leak, but because of incompetence in the press gang, where they released all the details for Blizzconline a couple of days early. People got hold of it and reported on it widely. So I wasn't going to do that just because, you know, some people would still like the element of surprise. But yes, we did know what it was, and we did know what was contained within BlizzCon Online, and there were no surprises as a result. It was up to you whether or not you read those details. I feel really bad for the press person who did that. You know, don't fire them. People make mistakes. But yeah, it's just like, oh, how Blizzard of you. Anyway, so we're going to get more. Now, if there is definitely a place in Shadowlands that needs improving, it's the Maw, definitely. You know, most people have already gotten to the point where they've got everything they need from Fenari, and they're not particularly interested in Stygia unless you're going for sockets. Now, they have actually announced that, you know, you shouldn't be hoarding your Stygia for the next patch whenever it arrives, because there will be a new currency. So don't do that. Don't hoard your Stygia. Spend as much of it as possible. Get those conduit upgrades. So 2 new areas are going to be incorporated, and I kind of like the way the jailer did this. It's like, you know, Scorpion from Mortal Kombat. So, get over here, and you just pull the chain in, and we got Cordia. So Cordia is called the City of Secrets, I think, and that's going to be, it's not going to be a separate zone. It's just going to be part of the Maw that's kind of been terraformed, and so that's nice. And there's going to be another area that has not been given any details. This is a common theme in BlizzConline, but yeah, there's going to be another area as well that we're going to be able to explore. We will be able to mount on the Maw, at least on the ground. There'll be no flying in there. So this is going to happen in 9.1, and it kind of invalidates the whole point of Twisting Corridors. If you're really that desperate to mount up and run around in the Maw, even though there's practically nothing left to do now if you've been doing any of it, then yeah, by all means, if you want your cosmetics, you go for it. But, you know, I think Twisting Corridors has just been made even more irrelevant than it already was. Fenari is going to have some new toys, most likely, and it's going to be a new currency. So, you know, that's why I say don't hoard your Stygia, because here comes a new currency. So this will probably not be anything particularly innovative. We're looking at probably more sockets, more toys for dealing with the stuff in Torghast, and probably, you know, some certain devices that you need to reach a certain point in order to access the new areas like Cordia and the unknown area. So it looks like the Covenants are a little bit annoyed, and they're now going into the Maw to take that fight to their jailer. Stick it up. And so apparently it's going to be a lot easier to control how much eye of the jailer is going to be on you at any one given time, and you know, you're going to have more Covenant involvement, because you haven't really seen, apart from a few fairly distressed Kyrians, there hasn't been an awful lot of interaction in the Maw itself. And of course, you know, this is kind of preceded by Anduin Menethil, Lich King 2, Lich Harder, who's gone and done an assassination number on the Archon. Didn't do a very good job. He got a key for something. And yes, his mission is now complete, and he's under the control of the jailer, and you know, it's still not a particularly interesting story thread for me at the moment. You know, it does feel a lot like retreading old ground, and a little bit of story innovation wouldn't have hurt. Never mind, moving on. The Archon has survived by all accounts, so she's still around, because that's good, because, you know, if she had died as a result of Anduin's attack, that would be 3 of the 4 major leaders of the Covenants would now be eradicated, and there'd just be the Winter Queen looking a little nervously over her shoulder. So, yep, she's sticking around, but I don't think you'll be able to pull off the Anduin trick twice, Mr. Jailer, so you're going to have to come up with something a little more subtle if you want something out of Mike Veen. So I think this is an appropriate time for us to get all very, very excited about some more Torghast. Yes. Now, if you have met the Terragru, then you've probably died a number of times in Torghast during the course of your runs. It's basically a big old meanie who comes around and chases you down after you've run out of lives to essentially kick you out. Now, DJ Eon Hazakostas has been engaging in the subtle art of making up stuff as he goes along, or spending 4 minutes to answer a question that could have been answered with a single word. And he has a kind of solution that he's thinking about here. It's like a progress system where, you know, you complete one floor and you'll get a certain amount of soul ash. So, you know, even if you fail the actual Torghast encounter, you will get some soul ash at the end because, you know, in terms of design, I can understand it. It's fairly frustrating. You get to the final boss, you can't get them down, you run out of lives, the Tergru eats you, you don't get your soul ash, you have to do it all over again. So this is kind of what he's making up as he goes along. It was very vague. I'm sure they're working on it right now as we speak. So there will be new traps, new animal powers, and like I said before, Venari's most likely going to get some new trinkets so we can bypass some of these new things. You know, presumably, because, you know, actually going into Torghast needs a point, there are going to be higher legendary ranks as well, with the arrival of 9.1, because we're going to be going up in terms of eye level with all of the new content that they're going to be producing. So yes, are you likely to cap out your soul ash before 9.1 arrives? Probably, but we will address that a little bit later. And my favourite bit in Blizzconline was the Wandering Ancient mount and the making of. You know, the amount of work and love and dedication the art team goes in. You know, say what you like about Blizzard, their art team has always pulled the amazing out of the bag. And, you know, they've done it with the zones, maybe apart from Bastion. But, you know, they've always done an absolutely top bang-up job, you know, given the engine that they are working with, which, while it's been iterated on since the beginning of Warcraft, you know, is still fairly limited on what it can pull off. So I think, you know, that was really fun to watch, you know, how that all came together, and we will all be getting that in 9.0.5, so that is something to look forward to. Now I think it's time to start delving into things which aren't quite as good and are putting up a few red flags here and there. So the Sanctum of Domination raid is going to be our new 10 boss encounter. It's going to include Kel'Thuzad, the Tergru, Eye the Jailer, Anduin. With Kel'Thuzad, you know, we've done this twice. He's a baddie who has, you know, been around since before World of Warcraft even existed. Did we really need to do Kel'Thuzad again? You know, we took care of him kind of in the Necrolord storyline as well. Not really spoiling it at this point. And so really we had to do Kel'Thuzad again. Is he going to have new abilities, or is it just going to be a rehash of all the other times we've encountered him? You know, that has a potential to be extraordinarily dull, and I wish they had been a little bit more original. And you notice from the list that they've given out, they haven't given out all 10 bosses, so they probably don't know all of them yet. And none of them are original in any way. They're already, you know, part of the lore of Shadowlands, so Eye of the Jailer, the Tergru, etc. And of course, Sylvanas Windrunner. So, they have talked about Sylvanas Windrunner, who's going to be the final boss of the Sanctum of Domination, as an epic encounter, which is basically going to replay her life from when she was a Ranger General through to when she became leader of the Forsaken, which was my favourite bit, and then this sort of genocidal maniac we got at the end. Now, the way that they have written Sylvanas over the course of this time, you know, has automatically programmed me to hate this individual. So, you know, I am very, very much interested in ending her existence now. How do you end the existence of someone on the plane of death? Well, you wrote yourself into this corner, so have fun with that, Blizzard. So yeah, I mean, I do like the idea of the stages of her life being phases in the actual raid encounter itself, but, you know, it does raise the question of what is going to happen at the end to Sylvanas Windrunner. Now, my obvious first choice is that we, the raiders, kill her, and we finish her off. You know, we dissolve her in a vat of acid, we Varian Rin her, I don't really care. Bring Gul'dan back and, hey, yeah, do that fizz thing where you just, like, dissolves Varian Rin. That'll be a fabulous way. There's no way she's coming back from that. I do not want her back in any way, shape or form. She is a dreadful character now, and very polarizing, but, you know, at the end of the day, you know, she's done so much that, you know, she cannot be turned around to good by this point. The other option, of course, and this is a definite possibility, is the Dragon Soul technique, which has been trademarked by Blizzard. This is where we go through the raid encounter and we suffer losses and repair bills and everything else. We get it down to 1%, and then another major lore character will come in and finish them off. In this case, it would most likely be Tyrande, Whisperwind, in her most fearsome Night Warrior pose. You know, they've done this before with Thrall. In particular, at the end of Dragon Soul, It's the Dragon Soul technique. Got rid of Deathwing for us, and of course he finished off Garrosh for us as well. We just had to watch that. Having, beaten him in the raid in the previous expansion, we had to now watch it. So, there is a possibility that that is going to happen as well, but at least she dies, so I'm fine with it. The third one, which is, I think, probably the most likely one, is going to be the redemption arc. Now, this has been talked about much by many content creators. There is not a lot to redeem in this character because they have written themselves into a corner with Sylvanas where she's done so many unforgivable things at this point that, redemption isn't really an option, though I fear that this is the way they're going to go. The whole, going through the course of her life does feel like, a goodbye to Sylvanas Windrunner's story in general, because, you're going through the course of her life and then she dies. Now, how that's going to play out, we don't really know. I would think from her looks of uncertainty about what's happening to Anduin and stuff, and that she probably is starting to realise that she picked the wrong side here, that she's going to do something to stick one to the jailer and sacrifice herself for the good of all of us, and we are going to have to pretend to be grateful in some way while kicking her. That is the most likely thing I think is going to happen. That is very unfortunate, and it's going to be infuriating to those of us who have been looking to get rid of Sylvanas Windrunner for some considerable time. Having Sylvanas, the previous expansion's protagonist, to be killed in the first major raid patch is, something they did with Gul'dan in Legion, for example. So, and he definitely got squished. Just don't keep her alive. She's done. Her story's done. Let's move on. In terms of moving on as well, it does open a larger question about, the Maw and Torghast and the jailer himself. I mean, this is his patch. This is his home turf. So we know that the Covenant's going to come in and they're going to cause a lot of trouble. It's going to be a lot less dangerous than the Maw because the wrath of the Covenants is being visited upon them, and now we're going into the Sanctum of Domination, and we're probably going to fix Anduin because he's a little bit broken right now. We're probably going to get rid of Sylvanas. Where does this leave the jailer? Where's he going next? Please let it not be somewhere underwater and Ishara has escaped and hooray, and then Void Gods like he did last time. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where we go from there, because that's pretty much, what you do at the end of an expansion. You pop into ICC and give him a darn good thrashing for his own good. So, there's an awful lot going on there, but I think it's time to address some of the more badness bits now, and the bits that make me particularly nervous. I mean, there has been an awful lot of sort of ethereal stuff being posited about 9.1 and its contents, but one thing they didn't entirely answer for sure is, when is this thing coming? And it does really seem like it's a culmination of my fears that, introducing a 6-month subscription could well be the portent of absolutely no content of any note coming for those 6 months. Because they've said, well, it's probably going to go on the PTR once 9.0.5, which is the previous patch, which hasn't arrived yet, goes live. Now, we don't even have that on the public test realm as yet, so it does look like 9.1 is going to be some distance away. To point out that at the moment, as of this time of recording, it is 118 days since Shadowlands was released. Now, I did do a list before, and of, when the first major content patch came around, and the current record is 156 days. I think we're going to break it. Even Battle for Azeroth, which, was like probably 60% finished by the time it went live, had its first major content patch after 120 days. So that's not very, very good news for those of us who have done the vast majority of the content already, and have very little left to do other than raid and maybe push a few mythic keys, and are really looking for something new to get our teeth into. 9.0.5, as mentioned, is not on the PTR yet, although it is due in March, so that's any of the next 2 to 5 weeks. I'd go more 5 than 2. And there's not a lot in 9.0.5 to start with. You've got a lot of tuning changes, you've got some valor points for mythics, and yeah, that's about it. I mean, content wise, it's a bit thin gruel. And that's not the only thing that's thin. I mean, while they had an awful lot of ideas that they were pushing forward to us, there wasn't a lot of detail in there. It did really sound sometimes that they were just making up answers to keep us titillated, so to speak. There wasn't a lot of concept art either. I mean, the Tazavesh dungeon, which I'll mention later, is one of those where they had a picture at least. But for the raid, they didn't have a full set of bosses. So, there wasn't any sort of idea of the graphical style of the Sanctum of Domination, though you could imagine it's going to be the same exciting Torghast, just being reused again. So in terms of actual nitty-gritty meat and potatoes, there wasn't an awful lot there. Now, they are going to introduce another 40 levels of renown, and part of that reward structure is going to be the Covenant armors. Now, I have to say honestly, I didn't like any of these Covenant armors. If I was, it doesn't matter what Covenant I'm in. I mean, if I was Night Fae, I would be particularly offended by what's being offered to me. Do we really need another 40 levels of renown? What are they going to reward us with? High item level on World Quests. And there will be Covenant flying mounts as well. And once again, you sort of go, the Bastion ones are nice. The Necrolord is a bee, or a wasp, or something. I don't want that mount. I think I'll just fly around in my helicopter like I have for years now. And flying itself is going to be unlocked in 9.1 and at the conclusion of the next set of the campaign. So that's great news. However, given how long it's going to be until 9.1 arrives, we are months and months away from actually being able to fly. And that would have been nice to perhaps bring forward a little, given that, but we'll probably even have less content to run through then if that happens, so perhaps that's why they haven't done it. And that is the main problem at the moment, one that people are now hitting a wall where there is very, very little to do right now. I mean, at the moment, we raid twice a week. We're going into Heroic. That's going to be our focus. That's fine. In terms of Mythic Plus, yeah, we could keep doing that, but, I mean, the Mythic Plus changes haven't even come through yet, so there's not a lot of point in running them. We've all done the World Quests like 20 times over at least. The reputations that matter at least are maxed out. I mean, if you really want to do the Avowed to kill some time, then you're more than welcome to. But, what we really, really needed was additional content, and it's not here. And there will be additional content, but even Blizzard don't know when it's going to arrive, and what shape even that it's going to take. So that's a bit of an issue, really. Another thing that doesn't make Blizzard look particularly brilliant in terms of this is, if we now starting to realise what 9.0.5 is, which is an attempt to keep us subscribed until 9.1, presumably hovers into the horizon, 4, 5, even 6 months from now, which is a dreadfully long time for a first major content patch. You're supposed to have a content drought at the end of the expansion when you're waiting for the new expansion to come out. That's when you usually be waiting 12, 13 months for something new to come. And, here we're going to be in a situation where we're going to be waiting 10 months for the first major content patch. That's really bad. Really, really bad. Now, of course, there has been some sort of a pandemic that's broken out across the world, and that has slowed down a lot of people's projects, including software developers. However, their major competitors, Elder Scrolls Online and Final Fantasy XIV, as I've already pointed out, even though the Final Fantasy XIV one is delayed, that's an entirely new expansion all by itself, so they, it took them a quarter, basically, later to actually get it out. But, that is coming soon. Elder Scrolls has got a new chapter, and it's got the whole rest of the year planned out, so, software companies in particular are not being particularly hindered by this pandemic. And so, 9.0.5 in comparison to all of this other new content does make Blizzard look a little on the sluggish side. And, it's going to be inevitable that there is now going to be a substantial population dip. Because, realistically, if we are looking at up to 6 months until 9.1 arrives, people are already going to reach as high item level as they're likely to get. I mean, we've not got any plans for Mythic rating at all. We'd be very happy with ahead of the curve, and we're comfortably going to get it now because it's months until the next major patch content comes through. But, after that, there's no additional reason to log in. When you say, yes, you could do alt, well, yeah, I have done an alt, and that alt is now going to sit there pretty much untouched because I only made the alt in order to experience the story content that I can't access unless I access all of the covenants individually, which is another design decision which is questionable to say the least. But now that I have experienced that story content, do I really want to grind up all of those reputations and do, you know, the world quests another 20 times for the lulz? No, that's not interesting. That's not what I call new content. It's not going to hold me in the slightest. So I have that problem. I'm sure a lot of other people had that problem. I have my main. It can tank. It can DPS. It can heal. It's doing all of those things perfectly happily. But, you know, she's getting itchy feet. Given the distinct lack of future content that's coming at the moment, to see little option other than, you know, we're going to get AOTC and then we're all just going to unsubscribe for a while because, you know, especially in a paid subscription service when you're just offering so little bang for your buck. It's like, oh, we're keeping the servers up. Oh, well done you. Everyone else can do that and they don't charge us for it either. If I would have had a suggestion at 9.0.5, they really should have brought something like Tazavesh forward because, you know, then people have actually something to do during the wait for 9.1 and, you know, an 8-boss mythic dungeon which looks pretty fun and has got a heist theme to it. You know, that could have kept interest going for a while. There could have been the additional ability to have new trinkets and gear and, you know, all of the other stuff. You know, something new, but we're not going to get that. And now 4 months in, and it's still, you know, another 4 months, 5 months, 6 months until we get anything. That's terrible, by any metric. So yes, that's everything. You know, I have to confess that I wasn't particularly impressed by Blizzconline. I didn't see a lot of depth. I saw a lot of padding. I saw a lot of far-off pronouncements and design on the fly, and basically I'm not seeing a reason to log in a great deal after we've completed heroic rating, because, you know, there's nowhere else for us to go after that. Anyway, I'd like to thank the guys who stopped by to see me fail massively on Sludgefist. I don't like chains, I don't like Stomp, I don't like that guy at all. But we got Sludgefist down, and we got Stone Legion Generals down, and people got a little bit of additional gear. So now it was good fun, and I'm still very much learning Mistweaver. It's been a lot of fun, and I like having people along with me sort of going, oh, no, you shouldn't have done that. The Venture Plan add-on has been updated. It's something that can't be updated through the WoW app. You actually have to go to the site itself. Just put in Venture Plan add-on into Google, and you should find it soon enough. And it's quite nice. The new one has like it has little green arrows to indicate if your characters are actually going to gain experience as a result of doing this. So, you know, that's a nice little touch that they've added. So I do recommend you update it. It's for the command table, and it's very, very good. Vivify did get another mana reduction in 9.0.5 in the last week, so they're continuing to dial down on the amount of mana it takes to cast Renewing Mist and Vivify. That's fine. It's always very welcome. Vivify is, you know, a little bit on the expensive side, but, you know, when you use it properly, which if you've been watching my streams, I don't, it is a very, very effective way to cleave your raid back up to health again. And you know, I think that's going to be the topic of my next video. Is going to be looking a little bit more into Mistweaver and why things aren't really working out the way that everybody wants. There's a lot of people in the Mistweaver community who are crying out for a few more improvements to make us competitive and make us wanted to be brought in. You know, I'm very fortunate because, you know, I have a spot now on a heroic raid team, and at the moment my numbers are not brilliant, but I will get better, and I'll be part of a pretty strong healing squad as well. But, you know, there's a lot of Mistweavers who aren't being taken because they're not bringing enough to the table. So, you know, I think it's probably time that we had a discussion about that, what we can do, and, you know, maybe even give Blizz some suggestions about what they can add to 9.1 to improve the lot of Mistweavers and, you know, the other healers that aren't taken a lot, like Holy Priests, you know, except for one particular encounter. You know, it's time for a bit more love, I think, and, you know, it's not just raids, it's Mythic Plus as well. We do need a little bit of help because the representation doesn't lie. We're not being taken for this content. Anyway, so yes, I'm gonna come up with a few more concepts. There's probably going to be a lot of stuff that has been taken away from us that we would like back. Manatee, anyone? No, the other Manatee, and yeah, so do tune in for that. I'm sorry, I know this has been a long one. That's why I'm going to chop it up. It's going to take a while to edit and stuff and get out. but it'll. So I do hope you you know, enjoyed my very bovine-like perspective on things, and I'll be back in another video very, very shortly. Yeah, I just want to touch base with you on Blizzconline, and I'll see you soon. I, of course, am the conspicuous moo, and a very good afternoon to you.